Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Breakfast with Dan and Louise.
It's at 8:31. Banning junk food adverts before 9 o'clock in the evening and an end to deals on unhealthy food. These are part of the government's new plans to tackle obesity in England.
The measures have been largely welcomed by campaigners, but how easy is it to change habits, and what is it like to live with the stigma of being overweight? Jay McCubbin has been finding out.
Joining us now is campaigner and cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra and also Tim Rycroft from the Food and Drink Federation. Good morning to both of you. Lovely to see you on the programme. Dr. Aseem, can we come to you first of all? Do you think this goes far enough from the government?
Dan, that's a really crucial question you've asked. I think these are positive steps, but absolutely no, it does not go far enough. I think the first thing to say is that at least there is a greater acknowledgement that this problem, this obesity epidemic, which, you've got to remember, 2004, the World Health Organization, announced an epidemic of global obesity. And we've, 16 years later, we've not really achieved very much. And that's because we've not tackled the root cause, which is the ultra-processed food environment. The extent of the consumption of these sorts of foods, Dan, which are essentially, nutrient poor, high in starch, sugar, salt, unhealthy oils, for example, is that half of the British diet now is ultra-processed food. So we've shifted away from, if you go back 30 or 40 years, what happened to sort of meat and two veg or the traditional British lunch hour? There's been a cultural shift, but a lot of it has been driven by the food industry, who unfortunately, they have a fiduciary obligation to make profit for their shareholders. They're not interested in your health. But they get away with very misleading marketing. They spend 27 times more money is spent on advertising confectionery, crisps, sugary drinks compared to public health education campaigns. So there's a huge imbalance here. But I think the banning of the advertising on TV, and hopefully that will extend to online services as well, is a very positive step. But we need to really just think that this is really a food environment issue. And it even extends to NHS staff. We know tragically 500 healthcare professionals died because of COVID. There are different reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is poor underlying metabolic health. And one study actually suggested, Dan, that if we had healthier lifestyles, possibly half, maybe more of those deaths would have been prevented. And, that's a really sad state of affairs that we've been in because we've neglected public health for a very long time.
Well, there's so much to pick up there with Tim Rycroft, who's Chief Operating Officer for the Food and Drink Federation. I mean, first of all, what is your reaction to that ban, for example, on junk food TV adverts?
I think it's pretty extraordinary, Louise, that after 4 months in which the food and drink industry has been rightly applauded for its heroic efforts to keep the nation fed, going to work when others were staying at home, putting themselves at risk, that we should be rewarded in this fashion at a time when the economy is in such tenuous shape that we would choose to hit our largest manufacturing sector, food and drink, one of our most successful creative sectors, advertising. And all of this, the advertising and promotions ban, the government says will reduce our calorie intake by 17 calories a day.
OK, but let's just specifically talk about, junk food. I mean, why concentrate on that as an industry?
Well, junk food is a term that the campaigners have seized upon to describe foods that are high in fat, salt and sugar. That's a definition that was set up a few years ago to define foods that shouldn't be advertised to children. It's quite wide-ranging. It includes a lot of things that people probably would be surprised at, like cheese and bacon, like mint sauce and mustard, like olive oil. So the fact is that we're talking here about advertising to adults. We're talking about adults exercising food choices. The way in which we've gone about helping people to make better choices is through reformulation and changing portion size. Our members have reduced sugars in the average basket by 11% over the last 4 years. That work is continuing. It needs to continue. Obesity is a very serious challenge. But the idea that these proposals are going to make a difference to obesity is completely undermined by the government's own figures.
Dr. Aseem, to come back to you on that point, I saw you smile when Tim mentioned the 17 calories. There's a lot of effort to make a little difference.
Yeah, I think, but there's still positive steps, Dan. I think we need to do a lot more. So I think one of the things that Tim said, and I've met Tim, he's a very respectable, nice person, but he ultimately represents the interests of the food industry and their profit. So I think that we need to realise there's a big clash here of interests, and our job as doctors is to look after public health and the health of the nation. And unfortunately, people are being misinformed with the kind of foods they're eating. I think what Tim said that was right, though, and I'll pick up on the other point that you mentioned about the economy in a minute, is that actually there's a lot of confusion out there about what is healthy eating. And the science has evolved, things change, and the best definition now is ultra-processed food is basically anything that comes out of a packet and has 5 or more ingredients. What the food industry should be doing, and we know that's linked to, there's many studies showing that links to adverse health outcomes, not a single study showing that they're beneficial for you, these sorts of foods. They're addictive, they encourage overeating, they hijack your appetite control mechanisms. The food industry know that, they make money from it, and then people get fat and sick, and that's the problem we're facing. But when we come to the economy issue, in essence, if you've got an unhealthy population, it's a false economy. We've seen what COVID has done. If the population is not healthy, how can we even have a productive economy? In fact, the British Health Work Survey showed that every year we're losing about a month per employee from sickness. And that's mainly because of lifestyle. Okay. And that's costing the UK economy, Dan, £91 billion a year. So I would ask Tim, actually, what is he doing to make sure that people who are employed in the food sector are healthy? Because I can guarantee you the majority of those people will be in poor metabolic health, and they need to think about that as well.
Tim, can I just put also another point to you as well about, the buy one, get one free, which are mostly on what we might term, not healthy foods, high in sugar and fat. Why, for example, do you think the food industry will come to a point when actually it becomes economic to focus on health and give apples buy one, get one free, Tim?
So you're not right there, Louise, actually. Which magazine did some research about 3 years ago. The balance of promotions between healthy and unhealthy food they found was about 50-50. And it's not surprising that it's harder to promote fresh food because it has a shorter shelf life. So promotions typically work on products that have a longer shelf life. And promotions are used to bring new products to market. They're the way in which challenger brands can get a share of shelf against more established brands. They're also the way that we bring to consumers' attention these healthier options. And the bizarre, illogical thing about these proposals is that they'll stop us from advertising and promoting lighter options.
Tim Rycroft, Chief Operating Officer for Food and Drink Federation, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Aseem Malhotra, both, thank you very much for your time this morning.
It's a fascinating discussion, isn't it, over one of the big things the government are pushing at the moment.